Raina was shocked to see Rick enter the cafe and make his way directly to her table as she was getting comfortable at her seat. For almost 4 years, Rick and his wife, Louise, had lived next door to Raina and her husband, Brad. They were both slightly older than Raina and Brad, in their early 40s as opposed to mid-30s, but the two couples had become close and had even taken vacations together, both with and without their kids. What a surprise! Rick looked over her shoulder as he approached, saying, "Shouldn't you be at work?" Rick smiled slightly and sat down, across from her. "I could say the same to you," he said evenly. "I took the afternoon off to handle some personal matters. I assume you did the same?" Raina nodded, saying, "I just needed to recharge a little after a busy morning. I didn't realize you were a fan of cafes like this." "I'm not," Rick acknowledged, matching her stare. Raina immediately turned away, and Rick went on. "I saw you walking and decided to join you. We need to talk." Raina's eyes grew wide. "Is something amiss? I hope Louise is okay." For a brief while, Rick looked down and gave her a comforting grin. "No, everything is good. Thank you for your concern. You and Brad have grown to be very important to us, and we know we can rely on you in case of an emergency. That's why I had to come here." "What's going on?" Raina asked, her voice trembling a little. "I'm a little anxious." Raina's face lit up in disbelief when Rick said, "Have you been intimate with him yet?" "I don't know who you mean," she said. "Who is the guy you're talking about? The one you keep looking at through the door?" Raina's heart skipped as Rick said calmly in an almost casual tone, "Did you, or did you not, sleep with him?" "No, not at all," Raina stammered, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. She instinctively moved her arms to try to brush off the tension, but Rick just shook his head. His expression softened as he closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, he placed a gentle, almost paternal touch on hers, saying, "You need to listen to me. I'm going to explain what's really going on, what you probably think is happening, and most importantly, what he thinks about it." Raina nodded in an attempt to calm her rushing mind. "He is charming." Rick, who is either younger or more accomplished than Brad, kept his voice steady and low, and he seemed to possess certain traits. "Brad is always there for you when you need someone to confide in, listens when you open up, gives you compliments when you need them, and is even prepared to make sacrifices for you. So far, so good." Raina's body tensed up. Unsure of how to react, she murmured, scarcely raising, her voice above a whisper, "Does Frank know?" "Of course he suspects," Rick responded. "And you know he does. But even without the evidence, those suspicions must make him feel foolish, don't they?" Raina swallowed hard as Rick went on. "Let me explain what transpired. You missed 2 significant events in the last 2 weeks, and both were related to Mr. Charming. He needed you as a friend, so you felt responsible to be there for him. You skipped your son's birthday and your 9th anniversary dinner." Raina's voice wavered as she attempted to clarify. "Nothing happened between us. We're just friends. The kind of friends you keep hidden from your husband because he wouldn't understand." Rick responded with a tone that said, "In actuality, this friend wants to know everything about your husband. You've told him all those intimate details you probably wouldn't share with me, and he supports you pretending it's all Brad's fault when things go wrong. I bet even Brad's suspicions that something is happening have been used as evidence of what a terrible husband he is. Let's be honest. Was it the day you missed your son's birthday or the anniversary dinner when he kissed you and told you he loved you?" Rick shook his head gravely. "When I missed our anniversary." Raina's face turned pale. She lowered her gaze, her hand trembling slightly. She muttered, "It was because he was grieving the loss of an old friend. Nevertheless, I immediately stopped it." Rick nodded slightly. "So, let's take a closer look at your defensive behavior and the fact that you're waiting for him while sitting here. I believe that things may have gone a little beyond a kiss. No sex, but enough that you would probably consider it cheating if you caught Brad doing the same thing. However, Rick continued. You still feel partially responsible because Brad isn't the husband you want, as Mr. Charming has pointed out. He's just a friend, providing you with what you believe you're missing at home. Yet you're drawn to him, and his attention is unsettling. But you don't intend to. When you crossed that line, Rick said, you most likely told yourself nothing had happened. But in your heart, you feel bad and hope Brad will never know. Will you tell him? Raina urged, you to acknowledge that I was correct about you. I can predict your actions because I've surmised how you feel, and both you and I know the truth. You slept with him, didn't you? Rick questioned, a tiny smirk tugging at the edges of his mouth. I tried to stop it, Rick, Raina said. But we didn't go all the way. We were close. I was upset and intoxicated, and Brad was acting really foolish, so I made a mistake. Raina's eyes started to water as she looked down and nodded quietly in confirmation. Rick groaned and gave her a pitying look. That's precisely what I assumed. You've just shown him to be correct, Raina. Raina wiped her tears and spoke in a barely audible voice. No, I won't tell Brad anything. I suppose he'll figure it out on his own. Rick went on. So, let's discuss what he believes is going on. Mr. Charming perceives a preoccupied woman as weak and amenable to manipulation. Rick held up a soothing palm and said, Don't interrupt me. Raina winced, but remained silent. You think he's targeting you, but he wants you for sure and is also playing a game with Brad. Mr. Charming isn't as innocent as he seems. This isn't his first time around the block, and he knows precisely what he's doing. Raina's heart was racing. But he didn't want to harm Brad. I have no doubt about it. Rick shook his head, saying, It's about Brad, not you. Mr. Charming enjoys stealing things from him, which irritates him and makes him feel insecure. To prove to you that he is more important to you than your husband, he persuaded you to miss 2 significant occasions that would have meant something to Brad. It's unlikely that it was a coincidence that his friend's death, or whatever crisis, arose just happened to fall on the days you missed. Raina trembled. In 3 weeks, it's Brad's birthday, and I won't allow it to happen again, Rick said, arching his eyebrow. When your spouse was waiting for you at the restaurant for an hour, you were in Mr. Charming's arms. You texted him to explain that. Your buddy had food poisoning, but you didn't even think to give him your true name, did you? Raina cast an ashamed glance down. Rick went on. You've made it clear where your priorities lie.